There's some very recent sad news about Virginia Giuffre, one of the women who has made accusations about Prince Andrew. She originally made an accusation about Alan Dershowitz, about Epstein.
About a whole bunch of people, Ehud Barak, Les Wexner, Jean-Luc Brunel.
What should people know about Virginia, about her story, and about her death?
Virginia had a very, very difficult life. She was molested at a very young age, and then her parents she was from a dysfunctional family, and her parents threw her into foster care where she'd run away, and they'd take her back, she'd run away. And then she ended up being on the streets, starting at about 12. And when you're a young girl to survive on the streets, there's a lot of unsavory things that are unescapable. And then she was eventually found by a pedophile named Ron Eppinger, who kept her sequestered in a apartment in Miami all day. And then pedophiles would come in during the day and pedophiles would come in at night. And then Eppinger eventually got busted, and she reunited with her father, who was working at Trump's Mar-a-Lago as a maintenance man. And he got her a job in the spa, and her dream was to become a masseuse, a massage therapist. So she had a book on it that she was reading. And there was Ghislaine Maxwell. And Ghislaine Maxwell said, I know a wealthy philanthropist, and he will put you through massage school if he likes you. So that's how she eventually got sucked into it. And she went to Epstein's home, his Palm Beach mansion home, whatever. And there Epstein was on his little table. And she had already done this innumerable times. So what Maxwell and Epstein wanted her to do came to her, unfortunately, very naturally, because she'd been molested so many times by the time she met Epstein. And Epstein didn't. The thing about pedophiles, especially ones that are pandering them to very wealthy and powerful people, you cannot really pull a kid off the street and expect them to perform for a wealthy, powerful guy. They have to be socialized. They have to be, for lack of a better word, trained. And Virginia was already trained, and she was with Epstein from 2000 to 2002. And actually, she was in the inner circle. She was flown around all over and abused by very powerful people. And what ultimately led to her break from Epstein was Maxwell gave her a ticket to Thailand and said that she could take a massage course there. They'd enrolled her for a massage course in Thailand. And the reason why they wanted her to go to Thailand is they wanted her to pick up a child and take her back to the United States. And what's amazing about Virginia is she had the conscience, the moral barometer, and she didn't want to indoctrinate anyone into that life. And while she was in Thailand, she met a guy from Australia, and she told him what she was up to and why she was in Thailand. And they kind of had an instantaneous love. And he was from Australia, and she went to Australia, and they got married shortly thereafter.
How did you get to know Virginia?
I wrote a book called The Franklin Scandal, a story of power brokers, child abuse, and betrayal. And that was about an interstate trafficking network in the 80s that got covered up. It was very similar to Epstein's network, almost like a carbon copy of Epstein's network. And I saw what was happening in the Maxwell trial. Maxwell was the only one indicted, and she was indicted on 2 or 3 conspiracies, and no one else was indicted. And I knew that it was a cover-up. I mean, I knew beforehand that it was a cover-up, but what was getting what the feds were getting away with Maxwell, I was really, really angry about, because Maxwell was only indicted on one count of child trafficking, which is a heavy sentence in the federal system. It's 15 to life. And she should have been indicted on 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 counts of child trafficking. She should have never seen the light of day. And as I said, she was also indicted on 2 or 3 conspiracies, and no one else was indicted. So I knew that it was going to be a cover up. And I was kind of fomenting a protest. And I wanted to protest what was going on there. So, and I put together a protest across the street from the courthouse where Maxwell was being tried. And I was tweeting about it. And that's how I met Virginia. Is she saw that I was very much an activist in this area. And we just kind of hit it off to a certain degree.
And a lot of people, of course, have commented that in the past, she said that she wasn't suicidal, kind of planting a seed that if something happened to her, that people shouldn't believe it's suicide. Now, it seems like she has died by suicide. That doesn't mean, of course, someone can die by suicide, and that doesn't mean that there's not a somewhat causal relationship between the person who abused them and the person who does that. I mean, that's probably too strong. I should rephrase that, because I don't want to suggest that it's kind of an inescapable outcome of it. But obviously, there's a relationship between what was done to her and her mental health struggles. Do you think this was suicide?
She tweeted that in 2019, and in 2016, she sued Ghislaine Maxwell for defamation of character. And that's where she named all the powerful men, was in a deposition. And I think she was frightened at that point in her life, because those documents were unsealed in 2019. And people could see exactly who she named. And I think that she was frightened, but she was a true warrior. And she was, when I met her, she was really, really gung-ho on helping other survivors of sexual abuse. And we had talked quite a bit, and I put together a petition because of the miscarriage of justice that the Maxwell trial was. And she signed it. And I got to know a couple other Epstein survivors too, and they signed it. I didn't know all the ones who signed it, but I got to meet a number of them. And with Virginia, I was speaking at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation has a summit, international summit every year. Now, I've spoken at 3, but I was speaking at one of those. And I don't know if she asked me or if the National Center asked me, but she spoke at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation's International Summit that year. And she did a really good job. And then she had made a lot of money suing Ghislaine Maxwell, millions. And then I'm sure that she got millions from Prince Andrew, that litigation too. And she was really, really determined to open up a rehab in Florida for victims of sexual abuse, and also started an anti-trafficking NGO. And then at a certain point, she just disengaged from everybody. She disengaged from me. She disengaged from the Epstein victims that she'd befriended. And she just kind of drifted away into Australia. And that perplexed, I think, a lot of people. Why? Because she was so gung-ho at one time, and then she just kind of just drifted away.
Right. And do you have any, I mean, a lot of people were kind of confused by this post that she wrote on Instagram, where she talked about having been in an accident, and she posted a photo of herself, and you can see she's black and blue. She said she only had a few days to live because she had gone into kidney renal failure. Do you have any insights into what she was talking about? Because this was this was March 30th. So it obviously was, she had more than 4 days to live, but.
Yeah, I can explain that. She got into an accident on March 24th. and she was hit by a bus, a school bus. Her car was hit by or the car that she was a passenger in was hit by a school bus. But it wasn't a big accident. And actually, the West Australia, that's the state she was in, West Australia police said that there were no injuries. But she was driven from that accident to a hospital, and physicians there said that she had some kidney related issues. And then she checked out the next day. And then about a week later, she went into a different hospital. And that picture that you saw of her was either her first or second day in that hospital. And she was in that hospital, and that was a beating that her husband administered to her. It wasn't an accident. It was a beating. From that hospital, she told People magazine that she had taken on Epstein and Maxwell, and now she had to take on the abuse of her husband. And her husband beat her up in January and preemptively filed a restraining order on her for violence. And he was awarded the 3 kids, which really broke her heart. So you've got someone that's endured a lot of trauma over the years, a lot of sexual trauma, starting at a very young age. And I don't think that her husband was initially abusive, but I think he became increasingly abusive. And you saw that picture. I mean, that picture was not an accident. That picture was a beating that he gave to her.
Wow.
And then she was discharged from the hospital, and she actually had to see a magistrate because her husband said that she'd text her, and that had broke the restraining order.
That she texted him.
Yeah, and that had contravened the restraining order. So she had to see a magistrate a couple of days after she got out of the hospital. She was at that hospital 6 or 7 days. But her attorney pled not guilty or asked for a continuance. And but she was due in court the following month.
Wow. It's really sad.
So I think what you have with Virginia is a lot of trauma and then heavy domestic abuse. And victims that have been through child sexual abuse are 3 times more likely to kill themselves than the general population. I think you had a perfect storm with Virginia. And given her abuse at a very young age, I'm pretty sure that she had dissociative identity disorder too. And that is another layer that can exacerbate someone's psychological health.